Hello everybody, GL1 here. Welcome to my online toy museum, and today we're going to talk about praying mantids and praying mantis toys, or like toys. So to start off, I'm going to show you this little fella here. This is a mantis puppet that I've had quite a few years. I don't know, 10, 15, I'm not even sure anymore. But you put your hand up in this fella and you can put your fingers inside there and move his front arms there back and forth and move his head around and look at you. So if you're not familiar with the praying mantis, you're going to become familiar today, and hopefully I'll be telling you some things about them that you didn't know. So here's a rubber model of a praying mantis. And as you can see, they have large forelimbs, and they use this for grasping prey. Praying mantids, there's 2,400 species at least. So that means different kinds. Some of them look like flowers, some of them look like leaves. All of them are lethal, and most of them are what are called ambush hunters. So what they do is they wait very patiently for something to come by, and they grab it with their front forearms. You see this here, okay, which has spikes on it. And they'll grab it, grasp it, and then they will start chewing on it right away. Now, I know a lot about praying mantids because I've done research on them, all right? So praying mantids, as an ambush predator, have different ways in which they go about going after their prey. Now, there are some mantids that will chase the prey down, but as I said, most are ambush predators. And we've all heard about how the female eats the male, or maybe you haven't heard that, but the female eats the male, decapitates him, takes off his head while they're mating. But actually, there's some important details about that behavior that are important to consider. It's not real clear-cut, and it doesn't happen in nature that often, and I'll get into that later. All right, so the praying mantis goes back all the way to the Cretaceous period, which is towards the end of the dinosaurs. So we're talking 66 million years ago. And they're related most closely to cockroaches and termites. And the cockroach relation you can actually observe because cockroaches and mantids can turn their head. So they are one of the rare insects that actually can turn their head and go after their prey. All right, so they are insects. They have 6 legs, and they have an abdomen. They have 3 segments to the body. They have a head, they have a thorax, and they have an abdomen. And the thorax and the abdomen are quite connected. Many of them have wings. Females have smaller wings than males. Not all mantids do fly, but the ones that do fly generally are males. And the males fly at night, and they believe this is to avoid predators like birds. But they also have to avoid bats. And it's real interesting because mantids have an organ on their thorax that they use. You know, bats use echolocation. They send a sound out to locate their prey. And mantids can sense the echo the bat is sending out and then send out a different auditory signal to confuse the bat as to where they are so they can't catch them. So that's pretty amazing, isn't it? And the males do most of the flying because they've got to look for the females. So early on, when mantids hatch from their eggs, and the female lays the eggs in the spring, there are more males than females. But as the season goes on towards the fall, the numbers tend to equalize, at least as far as we've been able to observe. Now, mantids, as I had mentioned, turn their head. And they have stereoscopic vision, so they can turn their head and see their prey very well. Stereoscopic vision, like a human or like a predatory bird, or any predators that are like lions and tigers, have stereoscopic vision, meaning that they can pinpoint the distance of the prey. Now, mantids will sneak up on their prey and they'll thrust their arms out to grasp it. Their arms thrust out almost 700 miles an hour in order to get it. So almost as fast as the speed of sound. So once they're sure they're going to get you, it's really hard to avoid their grasp. And the spikes will pierce into the prey, and then they just begin chewing. And I've observed this many, many times. So their vision can produce very high quality images. They've been able to study their eyes, and they have 10,000 components to their eyes in order to form an image, which is quite a bit in such a small little tiny eye, like a real mantis. So they can get high resolution in order to catch their prey, and they recognize what prey they're going after. They go after each other, lizards, frogs, fish, insects, spiders, and in particular, small birds. So poor small birds. So when I was in college, during my undergraduate, I did a lot of research on mantids. And in fact, even when I was, long before that, when I was probably, somewhere in my early teens, I'd often catch praying mantids and I would study them. And once I found an egg sac and I watched it hatch, and the egg sac, was about this big. It was brown. It's like a hard foam. It's almost like that insulation foam that you spray and then it's real gooey and then it hardens up. It's kind of like that. And then now the number of mantids that come out will be little mantises, little tiny ones, they're like this big, like the size of an ant. Can be anywhere between 10 and 400. Now the one that I had found, there were at least 100. And I knew that they might eat each other when they came out because they're very hungry, and sure they did. And of course, the ones that were larger tended to do the best. Mantids live in tropical and temperate zones, so you can find them, nearly everywhere. But what I have also found is that you don't find them every year. There are some years you'll find quite a few, and some years you won't see any, and they often like to be on bushes. There is a species, Brunner's stick mantis in the southern United States, that actually reproduces without any males. So it's what's called parthenogenesis, and it can produce offspring with no males. There are other mantises that can do that, but those species have males. It's just the Brunner's stick mantis, they've never been able to find any males. Now they'll molt. Now what I would do is, so when that egg hatched, I'd pick one little mantis and I'd study him, okay? And they would molt, I'd feed them and they would molt and they'd get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I had them get to about this big, although they can get maybe 8-9 inches long. The Chinese mantis is green and it's larger. There's the brown mantis, which is North American, and it is smaller, probably gets to about 5 inches. So they'll molt, and each time they molt, they'll get larger, and they'll leave behind their molting. It'll crack on the back of the carapace here, and they'll come out. And on their final molt, they'll have wings. So getting back a little bit to the cannibalism, because everybody's always been, interested in the fact that, the female eats the male. Well, 83% of the time, the male actually escapes. And what they also have found is that in nature, it's not a common behavior that the female eats the male. It's in captivity. So in captivity, they've also noted that when there's a lot of food around, they're feeding the mantises very well. The female is not as interested in eating the male, and there's actually quite an elaborate mating ritual, sort of a dance that the males do and some shimmying that the females do. And so we really don't know all the machinations of the behavior of the female eating the male. Now, because they're such aggressive predators, the only predator that is more aggressive than a praying mantis and eats more than a mantis, okay, because mantis eat more insects than anything except dragonfly larvae. Dragonfly larvae are the most voracious insect that we know of, and mantises are second to that. But they will eat. I mean, I would have a mantis that's, maybe about 4 inches long. And what I've observed, actually, even starting when they're very small, mantids can eat spiders 3 times their size. Even if the spider gets web on the mantis and gets it wrapped around one of its forearms, it will use the other forearm, grasp the spider, eat it, kill it, and then just eat the web off the other arm. So very difficult for a spider to stop a mantis, very difficult for anything. But so when, if you ever want to talk to anybody about the female or make that joke about, oh, the female eats the male or whatever, do a little research on it. They're not done with that research, so it's really not cut and dry. Things in captivity definitely behave differently than they do in the wild. Now, when I was doing my research on mantids, what I was most interested in is their behavior. And what I observed is that mantids have different behavior for what prey they're going after. So they have prey recognition abilities. So that means that when it's a spider, they know how to grab a spider one way, a cricket another way, an ant another way, a fish another way. They'll go, and even interacting with other mantids, they will interact in another way, in a different way. And there's also different behavior as to when they are stalking prey, or when they feel intimidated, or when they really don't want to interact at all. So when a mantis goes after something that can bite and sting, like an ant, it knows to grab the head, I'll show you on the bigger fella, the head in one forearm, forcep, and the thorax, the abdomen in the other, because they sting out of the abdomen and they can bite with the head. And then it will just chew the head right off, thus ending the danger. Crickets bite as well, and they kick. And the kicking won't hurt the mantis, but other than it could damage its, damage if it's grabbing and it kicks, really hard. It could maybe, damage the forearm. But a mantis knows, grab the head of the cricket so it can't bite you, grab the 2 legs together so it can't kick, and once again, eats the head off. With the spider, what they'll often do is they will grab the spider, all 8 legs, or if it can get 6 legs, with both forearms, and then eat it right down the middle. Okay? If they eat a salamander, they don't care which way they eat it. They just grab it and eat it. And the same thing with a fish, because fishes flop. They'll pin it to the ground and then just start eating wherever it can. They really don't have a specific strategy on that. Now, when a mantis is stalking, what they will do is they will have their forearms out in front of them, very far out. And oftentimes what they'll do is if they're clinging to a leaf or a branch, is they'll start to rock back and forth in front of the prey item. Okay, if they're going after, let's say they're going after a bee or a butterfly, they'll start rocking back and forth. And there's different beliefs on why that is. Is it trying to mimic a leaf in the wind? I wonder if it's actually just testing to see if its movement will not scare the prey away and make it feel safe that there's movement around them, but it's okay. And then when the moment is right, they lean very far forward and they get those forearms ready, and then they snatch it so fast and grab it. And like I said, they know how to grab it, and then they just start chewing right away. Sometimes prey will get away, but not often. Now, if a mantis is afraid, so if it's something larger and it's coming at the mantis, what they will do is they will get very tall. They'll bend the back of their abdomen up very high, curling it up high, push their legs down, make themselves very tall and rigid, and bring their arms very close in but to the sides like this, not in front of them. So when they're in front, that's when they're hunting. But when they're afraid or they're going to fight, they bring their arms all the way back like this. And they're much faster. But they don't always grasp what's coming after them. They don't want to tangle with it. But what they will do is punch. They'll flick with this part of the forearm and flick the predator or the other mantis. And I put two mantids together. I wanted to see how they would interact, and that's exactly what happened. Now, the mantis that lived in my enclosure was eating a spider. And then another mantis, which was larger, I had a brown mantis and a green mantis came over, and the green mantis started to stalk the brown mantis. And the brown mantis knew, but it was in the middle of eating. It had one arm occupied. It did not want to let go of that food. So when the other mantis came over, it just turned its head, very quickly, like, woof, and looked over at it. It was over here. It was over here. Okay. So it looked at it, and then the other mantis started to do that stalking behavior and start to rock back and forth. Well, the brown mantis, my mantis, knew what was going on, and then it flicked the other mantis, flicked it, and knocked it down to the bottom of the cage. What I had built is I built a toothpick structure for the mantis to climb on. The other mantis, the attacking mantis, fell to the ground and then came back up, worked its way up again, and stalked my mantis again, who was still eating, did not want to let go of that food, and also didn't want to tangle with the larger mantis, and again flicked it down. This happened 4 times. By the 4th time, interestingly, the green larger mantis just was on the bottom of the enclosure, like this, looking rather sad, looking down, not looking at the mantis anymore. And then I had like saran wrap windows, and then it just looked at the window like it wanted to get out, like it didn't want to be in there anymore, which I let it out right away. I didn't want, it wasn't about torturing anything or anything like that. I just wanted to see how the behavior was. And, it had realized, hey, I can't win in this situation. I keep getting flicked to the ground. So I want out, and I let him go. Now, if you have a mantis, you can feed them water and sugar on a spoon. You can put water and sugar, mix it up on a spoon, and then you can put it in front of the mantis, and it will drink from the spoon. And in fact, I had a mantis that had laid its eggs. She was getting ready to die. I didn't want her to die. I wanted to see if I could extend her life. So what I did is I put a heat light on her, and then I gave her the sugar water. She drank it. She perked up and lived another 2 months, all the way into January, which was about, significantly longer than they were supposed to live. So that was an interesting experiment. I also tricked a mantis into eating a dead spider. Mantids do not eat dead food. They only eat live prey. But what I did is I took a freshly dead spider, and I had my enclosure, like I said, it was this toothpick structure. It was cardboard box. And what I did is I took a pin, I stuck it through the cardboard, and I put a spider on it, and I moved the spider as if it was alive, and the mantis went and grabbed it and ate it. So that worked. All right, so that's all the things I can tell you about mantids today. I hope you find them fascinating. Wherever you live, you could probably find one. Just research what kind are there. So as far as mantid toys, all right, so this is a transformer from 1998. This is a Buzz Claw. You could still get this. It's about $50. It was only $5 when I got it. So this is a cool little mantis, because I love mantids. It's a cool little mantis transformer, and you have a lever here, and you can push on it, and does that. Okay, it's got like a spring and some gears, and it's got wings. See that? And it's got the a bit of a carapace cover, and you can see it does turn into a robot, and I'll be doing that for you later. And you know, Mrs. GL1 will often say to me, GL1, when are you going to stop buying toys? And you know, what I always say is when they stop making toys I want. Well, here's the other problem. They make toys I didn't know I want till I see them. And so sometimes that happens too. So here's a toy I didn't know I wanted, and then I was lucky enough to get it. This is Mantisaur. And Mantisaur is all the way back from 1986. So quite an old toy. You can find Mantisaur on eBay for $30 to $100. And it's often missing pieces. It seems to lose legs a lot. And even the saddle that he's sitting on. But it's too expensive even with that. Now, I was lucky enough to get this fella for $10, and it was missing the gun in the back. But I have a little interesting story about that. And Mantisaur was the riding robot mantis for Hordak. So Hordak is actually more powerful than Skeletor. So in the Masters of the Universe saga, Hordak is often the enemy of She-Ra, but sometimes interacts with He-Man. And actually on the box where you can get, you can find Mantisaur in the box for $500 or more and like 800 euros. So crazy. So $10, and it was just missing this leg, and it was missing the gun here. Now, I made a leg out of aluminum. Very simple to do. I actually just used heavy gauge scissors, cut the aluminum, drill a hole in it, put a self-drilling screw in it, bend it so that it's like a leg, file the aluminum, because aluminum files very easily, so there's no sharp edges, and now he's got a leg. I took some weapons from, I don't know what they go to, and I just bungeed them on with those clear little bungees to the forearms. This is Hordak's crossbow. I gave Hordak one of these guns. But, you know, for $10, I really can't complain, and some just random aluminum I had around. Now, there's a gun in the back that Mantisaur came with that was missing. But this also goes to Hordak. It's like his little bat friend that hangs on his arm. This gun had been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. I don't remember what it goes to. So I just sat it there and like, one day it'll become useful. The gun that was here broke off and it left the little piece of plastic stopped up in the hole. I used a drill and it moved it, and then I used some pliers and pulled out the piece of plastic, and it just so happens that this that has been sitting on my shelf fits perfectly. Because many things in my life work out perfectly. I'm just very lucky that way, and I make that joke all the time. Mrs. GL1 knows it and has also seen it come true often. So this is the He-Man that might end up going up against Mantisaur and having a rough time, right? That fella. And then here, but of course She-Ra, the most powerful woman in the universe, Power Princess, who was riding a figure that I made, probably 17 years ago or something, after Toy Story and Disney. They had to make your own, toy, like you could take all these different parts and mash them together. And obviously I took T-Rex legs, and I took a My Little Pony body, and I put some kind of horrid arms on it and a T-Rex head. And I figured, that looks like a great ride for She-Ra to have. So this is the She-Ra that came out, I can't believe, already 3 years ago. So here she is. And because I knew this was going to be valuable, and I was right, it has gone up in value. I think it's like $100 or something. I got one that even the hole has not been punched out all the way for hanging it, as if I care. But this is from 2020, And so that's what she looks like. She can wear her mask 2 different ways. But anyway, I would definitely recommend, if you like Mantisaur, because he looks like something that's going to be fun to play with, or just set up on your shelf. You can get them maybe for $20 to $30, something like that. Might be missing some parts. And, go ahead and make some limbs and stick a gun on yourself or something like that. It really, you can have fun with it your way. All right, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something about praying mantids. I certainly learned some things re-researching it again. But before I go, I'm going to transform this Fusor, and I'll show that to you at the end. All right, so here you go. Here's the Fusor. All right, in robot form. Buzz Claw, and you can see you have the lever here. And you push that. He's got like, the mantis claws. And see his head. And part of the wing cover comes off and becomes a shield. All right, and he can hold things in his hand. And if you look at the head, okay, which folds over, and you look at the Mantisaur, pretty similar, right? And if you look at a praying mantis, you can see the resemblance, right? So they did a pretty good job. Mantisaur's pretty cool, right? He can pull on these levers, and this is how he grips things. And then it has this extra piece here that a mantis doesn't have, so it can lift, like He-Man can get caught in that and lift that up. This is Flying Fists He-Man. So this is the newer one, not like, just from like a year or so ago. They're reissuing all the classic He-Man with better articulation. So it has these handles in the back, and then you move it like that, and he spins like his flying fists. And the shield spins too. So, just give you a little detail on the toys. And let's see. The Fusor is nice. It has ball joints in the knees and the hips, shoulders. So it's a well-made small little transformer. And then you can take this off. So this is just a weapon when it's like this, but without that, he just looks like that. And then he can have claws, so you can use this as a claw, or he can have it like that and use his, the 5-toed mantis, right? So like a claw. And then I just wanted, if you hadn't seen She-Ra before, so this comes off and she looks like that. And then this can go on this way and fit on her head that way, or just with nothing there, like that. I like these new reissues. I never had She-Ra. I really wasn't into He-Man or She-Ra toys. I do have a lot of the old classic He-Man toys, which I really haven't shown yet. You just pick them up at like yard sales and stuff over the years. And they're usually in a little bit of rough condition. But what's nice about all the new ones is that they have a ball joint to hold the legs on. What they used to use is a rubber band up inside, and the rubber band would dry rot and break, and then the legs would come off, and there really was no practical way to get them back on. Plus, they didn't have moving knees or ankles or elbows, and the heads couldn't look around. They could just go back and forth. But this, you get a lot better articulation. And they did that. This is actually not the original Hordak. This is also one of the new reissues of Hordak over the last couple of years. So it's got all the new articulation in the wrist and the elbows and shoulders and knees and feet. So it's a nice action figure. They're on the 5.5-inch scale. So, all right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.